So, okay, now you all know it's being recorded. So we're gonna make this like, casual as well too. You wanna make sure that people don't feel stressed out, and EOP is a big family, so we wanna make sure that you all feel connected in a lot of ways. So like it was mentioned, y'all can jump up at any time to ask any questions, do anything in the chat. We're pretty flexible with all of this. We have a very few set of slides, so we really wanna make sure a lot of this is like conversation that we're gonna have. So some of the things that we are gonna be talking about are, well, let me step back actually. So the reason we're calling this presentation Humble to Hustle is from a lot of our experiences, and Gustavo and I will introduce ourselves a little bit more about our experiences. I think being humble is a big value that a lot of us bring to the table. I think we really want to make sure that we're grateful for a lot that we have, that we work really hard for what we have. But I think when you're humble, that shouldn't be seen as a weakness, and sometimes people see that. We want to make sure that that humbleness is something that you can value and a tool that you can bring into a hustle mindset as well. So just so that we can look a little bit more about what we're going to talk about. So we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit. The three main topics that we're going to discuss are internal job preparation, ready, sit, referral. So we'll go through all of that as well, and negotiations. So we'll also share this deck with you all later in case there's parts from here that you do like and you want to keep and you want to cut, however you need to do. So I'll start first by introducing myself. So that's me and my family. Just to give you all introduction, so I'm first generation college student. So I'm also considered a low income student, and I'm Mexican. Both my parents are from Mexico, and all of my siblings were born in the United States. I'm the oldest of three, and these are my siblings. So just to give a background of my education wise, so I also studied at Cal. I did a double in social welfare and Chicano studies with a minor in education. And then after that, I actually went to get a master's degree in counseling, focused on college counseling and K-12 counseling. So I'm the first in my family to get a master's degree. Out of everyone in my family. So it was actually a really big deal. I actually didn't know what a master's degree was for the longest time. I didn't know what it really was until I was actually a senior in college. So it's something that was really new and never really talked about in my high school household. When it comes to my siblings, my sister actually also went to Cal. She studied mathematics and she works at Chevron right now. And my brother went to East Bay. He has a degree in chemistry, and then later on went to Nebraska to get a master's in forensic science and is currently at COP. So the reason I want to make sure to highlight those type of things are, for many of us, if we are the oldest in our family or we are going through education, a lot of our goals are to help our siblings and help them and our families do better in a lot of different ways too. So I do know that a lot of what I did was a lot of learnings. You kind of become that test person sometimes of figuring out what works and doesn't work, but it's really about what worked and passing that on, but also what doesn't work so you can teach that to other people in your family. I'm also an Oakland native, so I come from a school that wouldn't be considered a good school at all. So I came into Cal very unprepared. I actually got academic probation after my first semester at Cal. So for those of you that don't know, that means your grades or your GPA are considered lower. So I actually had like a less than a 2.0 GPA after my first semester. So that was actually a big transition for me to come from what I thought I was doing well in high school, but I learned in college my mindset never shifted from high school, doing great. I could get all my work done during the school time, never really had to study, to actually going to college and going to libraries a lot of time, taking classes I never knew what I was getting myself into, and actually like lack of advising that I received for my first semester. So, and other parts I think are also really important to me is I've traveled to over 30 countries. My family and I, that's something that's really important to us. I've been working since I was 13. So many of my first jobs was working in the fields, picking cherries, selling candy in my classroom, tutoring elementary school kids. So like really being creative on how to bring funds in to support myself, because I really didn't want to ask my parents for money, because that was like important to me since they had already given me so much. And a little bit more background professionally. So I was an EOP counselor for around 8 years. A lot of my work at some point focused on EOP STEM. So Gustavo, along with Anna, we and other students, we helped create EOP STEM, but I also help with the EOP Graduation and Lending Project, the iClicker program, interns, anything related to student staff. But I was there for 8 years, and it's a community that I hold really close to my heart. So I'll let Gustavo introduce himself now.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Gustavo. So I was born in El Salvador, and I came here when I was 2 years old. Have no recollection of anything from my home country, but first gen. My parents were, my mom, she was a teacher in El Salvador. My dad worked in the farms as well. And when they came here, it kind of sucked, because when they came here, my mom, she had to work as a seamstress, and then my father in construction. And that was just because of the circumstances of being in an immigrant family. I'm the oldest of two. My younger sister, her name's Stephanie. She's actually at Cal right now. She's finishing up her third year, I think. The year is kind of fused in, but she wants to be a doctor, and I mean, she's killing it too. Los Angeles native. So the reason why, fun fact, I came to the US was because I told Mitzi this, and I recently found out that it wasn't because I had a kidney and a half. My mom told me it's because I had one and it was malfunctioning. And I'm like, what the heck? Like all this whole time in my life, and you're just telling me this. But yeah, so I'm currently pursuing a PhD, and I'm the first in my family to do so. I've traveled a lot. So coming when I was 2, I was undocumented. So throughout high school, I didn't know what that meant. And going into college, it was more of you can receive a lot of financial support from the government. So no FAFSA. And at that time, the undocumented program was just picking up, the AB 540 program. So that was the only way that I was able to get funding to go to Berkeley. And not a lot of schools were offering this. I was blessed. Like Berkeley said yeah to me, and then got hella funds to go to school there. I'm currently finishing up working at a company called Eaton. It's a power engineering company, and I'm a design engineer there. I'm finishing up in December. And with that being said, I have this leeway where I'm in school right now and then finishing up in December for my job. So another blessing. And they allowed me to stay there, and that was through negotiation too, which we'll get to in a few slides. That being said, I am a student at Cal, at Berkeley. What the heck? At Cornell. And as a student, I know the whole thing with like Zoom. If you feel comfortable, by all means, show your faces. It makes it more personal. I wish we were there in person, but if you feel comfortable, otherwise we'll ride it along. But yeah. Oh, and yeah, by the way, that's my wife, Josie. I've been married for 2 years now. Our cat Dexter, and then my mom, my sister, in the picture. So yeah. All right, let's see. Okay, so for this talk, just to get us going, for internal job preparations, the emphasis here is understanding what is it that you want to do. What are your goals essentially, and what communities do you want to work for? Are you working for example, a nonprofit? Are you working for a big industry? And understanding who they cater to. So for example, our company Eaton, we cater to a lot of hospitals, a lot of big name brands like Amazon, and just understanding who your end customer is in a sense, and then what makes you happy. Like, are you happy with doing projects that entail design where you're in the computer all day, or are you more of a personal person where you need to be with someone and supporting them and guiding them, and those are two very different avenues that you could pursue. To give you a quick example here, I'm a very positive person. So on my second year with Eaton, I worked as a quality engineer, and you only get called as a quality engineer if something goes wrong. So they're always calling you, telling you our breaker broke down and we need it today or yesterday, and make it happen. It's never like, oh, you did such a great job. It's more like you're expected to get this done now. And that wasn't me. And that fast-paced lifestyle wasn't me. I'm more of like, take your time, focus on a project, and follow it through fruition. So understanding how you work and what you like to do is important. And who do you want to impact? Who's the end customer again? And again, what kind of work makes you money? So at the end of the day, you're also trying to find what is the best way to support yourself and your family too. It's important to help out other folks, but if you're not being valued, if you're not being supported through your company or through the industry that you're in, then there might need to be a reevaluation of what your value is, and shifting those concerns. Yeah, and then what jobs do I hate? So like I told you, that quality was rough for me. That year was tough, and there was nothing I could do about it. I tried really hard. I joined hella organizations with Eden to make it more enjoyable. So I started a program for like public speaking there. What's another thing? I joined STEM, the SHIP conference, where I would go and visit students and hire them as well. So those are the things that were making me happy, but quality wasn't it. What are your limitations? So this is a big one. For a lot of folks who are family oriented, leaving home is really rough. And that was one for my family as well. So coming to Cal was a big one. I originally wanted to go to Cal State Pomona, Cal Poly Pomona, because it was just a lot closer to home. And I wanted to make sure that mom was okay, that my sister was okay. So evaluating what are the priorities there. And the reason I came to Cal was because my mom was like, everything's gonna be fine. Like we trust your decisions. If this school is the right one for you, pursue it. So understanding what your limitations are, location, if you're highly flexible, usually flexibility helps you in certain companies. Commitments, with higher responsibility comes more commitments too. So are you okay with a 9 to 5, or are you okay with like always having to be on call? And that's one of the things that a lot of students or people in my job right now who are higher up, they have to go to work on Saturdays, sometimes even Sundays. If something in our facility breaks down, they're the ones going and fixing it. So just being aware, how do you want to associate your time with work and family, and try to balance all those things. And then what are you great at? So if you're a great communicator, if you like to problem solve, what a lot of folks in my industry would do, they would just walk out to the plant floor where everything's getting built. They see problems and then they go at them. They see who are the folks building this technology there. They ask for their input, and through that collaborative work, they're able to get it done. But other folks are more like, no, I need to be at my desk. Give me the project and I'll get it done here. And I'll do my 9 to 5. So it's navigating what you're good at. Are you better at designing concept ideas? Are you more into communication, more people skills? And then honing those skills and pushing towards your essential perfection. Also, are you good at having multiple projects at one? That's another example there, that if you want a Hawkeye emphasis on your work, or you can manage and multitask and do certain projects at the same time, which I think I prefer. So for my first rotation, I was a continuous improvement engineer at a small company, at a small location here in San Francisco. And you basically did everything from sales, from marketing, from designing the tech, from actually building the tech. And I loved it. There was only maybe like 20 of us in that facility. The current one that I'm in right now, there's like 500. So that one, you're wearing this one hat. Like you're gonna design the tech. We have people that are selling it, people who are marketing it. There's no need for that, for you to do that type of work. But yeah, managing what you're great at and honing those skills. But yeah, I'll pass it along to Mitzi on the next one.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure to highlight that during this step, it's exploratory, and that's a lot of what's going on here. And when it comes to exploratory, you also want to think about how are you going to explore that. Like that doesn't mean you have to accept a 3-month internship and you just hate it for all 3 months to decide I want to work at X company, right? Or I want to work on this project. I think especially being at Cal, there's so many different opportunities, and with things being remote, there are actually a lot of ways to explore things at home that might take up a little bit of time. So is it a conference you go to that's half a day? Is it doing a few informational interviews? So what are things that you can do that maybe will take up a little bit of time, and then you can say like, okay, I really like this, or your reaction automatically might be like, this sucks, I never want to do this again. And that's okay too. You know, I remember like when I was at Cal, I actually used to work at the Cal Calling Center, and I did it because I needed money and the hours were super flexible. And I was like, this is going to work for me with everything I have going on. And then when I got there, I actually didn't feel comfortable asking for money from people. So if you don't know what that job is, you're pretty much calling Cal alum, you're asking to donate. And, you know, I love Cal, like I'll give a lot to Cal, but I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So, and there are the people that were killing it. Like they were, you know, on these walls and markers and making all of this. And I knew for me, that's not my type of job, and actually quit after like my second day there. Typically I wouldn't do anything like that, but in the end I knew, why am I going to commit to this when I could find another job or find some that would still meet my needs of bringing income in, but explore other fields a little bit more too. So you want to add anything, Gustavo?
Oh, by the way, Mitzi, there's a student saying if we can make the screen full screen. It's kind of hard for them to see it.
Oh yeah. Cool. Okay. Sorry. All right, thanks for that. So I want to make sure before we move on, are there any comments or questions or that folks want to bring up? Okay, we'll keep on going. Okay. So let's say y'all gotten to a point where you're like, I have a better idea of what I want to do, or I have a better idea of what I like. So negotiations is a big part of it. And for many folks, this might feel really, really scary and something that's really new and something that you might not have done. And all those feelings are okay. I think the reality is all of us have negotiated in one way or another. We might just not think about it. When you're trying to figure out where you're going to go eat with your friends, you're negotiating. When you're trying to figure out, should I buy this pair of shoes or should I not, you're negotiating with yourself. You're trying to think about different parts of what your give and take with everything. So, but when it does come to other components of it, I think, especially when it comes to money that we're asking with other people, that can feel like something that's not anything we're used to, especially when you're talking about bigger dollars or life-changing amounts. So one thing we want to make sure we do talk about is balancing multiple offers. So what's important to know is sometimes the process might be, you know, you're looking for a job, you're applying online. Oops, actually, I lied. I went to one slide ahead. I'm gonna step back. But we'll get to negotiations. So we're gonna step back even more to the looking for jobs part. So one thing we are gonna talk about is LinkedIn. Once we finish some of these slides, I'll show you all what my LinkedIn is and the process that kind of goes through that, because I was able to get a lot of support with that because I've actually transitioned jobs a few times already. So I'm on like my third career, so I want to talk about what that looks like. But for many of you, LinkedIn is a great start of how to find jobs and create a profile for yourselves. We do know that like social media is out there and folks have social media in a lot of different ways, but having a professional sense of that is actually really important. Some things that can happen on LinkedIn is it could show recruiters that you're looking for jobs. So there are features on there where you turn it on and off. And when a recruiter logs in through their portal, they will be able to find who is actively looking for a job at this time. I think it also, when we're thinking about even the exploratory stage a little bit more of what is my dream job and you might not know, or what I want to do, sometimes it's actually, I think that we haven't been exposed to other jobs that are out there. You know, I really think a lot about like when I was a young child and I was like, what kind of job am I going to do when I'm older? So I remember like teacher, lawyer, doctor, like kind of some like mainstream careers that were talked about. But actually I decided to become a counselor like later on in my career. And I never had thought about that when I was young. Like one day I want to be a counselor. So, you know, part of it is exploring what type of jobs are out there, what type of job titles are out there. And I will say job titles sometimes are really messy. You can have like a job title, for instance, is project manager. That's one that I've had before. It can mean something different in every single company. But at least I know that's like the realm of what I want to look into. And another part is skill set. So I will show an example of that. But for those of you that have gone on LinkedIn and you see a job, you might say like, this is something I would love to do in 5, 10, 15 years. Something you will notice is on the right, it says, these are skills that we're looking for. And sometimes they're either checked off that you have them or you don't have them. I'll show you kind of like where you can place that. But I think a really good thing about that too is noticing if I don't have these skill sets, what do I need to do to meet those? What do I need to do to click off all of these skill sets to say, I'm ready for this? Because the way LinkedIn works is it tells me like the percentage of chance I have of getting an interview. And of course, it's the algorithm, you know, it doesn't take me in as a person, but it does tell me like I have 80% of the qualities that they're looking for. And if it's a job that I really want and it tells me I only have 10% of it, I can go in that skill set list and say, actually, I do have all of these. I just never put them in my profile or so I need to go back in there and say, I need to add these on here or take off the other ones that actually are not really important to where I am in my life right now and the career goals that I have, and let me add these on here instead. And the next part is be active and reposting, connecting, and commenting. So an example of what it was is, you know, 30, 40 minutes before the session started, I went on LinkedIn and I posted the flyer of us doing this presentation and talking about it and tagging Gustavo on there so that people that know us, and I've actually had a lot of my old students go on there and are liking it, and other people are finding out about it because of that. It's on their last minute in their eyes and they didn't know about it. So I'll show you like how that looks like on a LinkedIn profile so that in case you're like, I don't have anything to say, maybe you don't have anything to say, but you can repost other folks' things or just like other posts as well. So let's say right now you're like, cool, I found this job, like this company looks awesome, I really want to work there. How do I get in? So people is really the way of getting into many, many jobs. You can have the greatest resume, you could pay $100, $200 for someone to review your resume, but if you have a person that can back you up, that's something great. And a person backing you up doesn't mean a person that's known you for 5 years or that you've worked with for a whole year. It literally could be someone that you've met for 2 minutes, and that's okay too. So what I really want to make sure is y'all understand, on LinkedIn, you can find people that work in every single company. So what you can do is like you look at a company and then so you find all the employees that you have here, and then you can click them. It shows you everyone that's had a role there or is currently at a role there. And part of it is, how can you connect with someone in there? So do they know someone that's connected to you? Are they a Cal alum? Did they go to the same high school as you? Sometimes it's like, who looks more active? So I've gone on there and I find people and I'll say like, this person has been reposting a lot. Let me follow them and contact them as well too. And part of it is, what do you have to lose? So when I was like looking for jobs and trying to figure out who I want to contact, I would actually make a list of 2 people from each company. And I would contact the first person that I knew I had a connection with. I would or the second person would be, maybe they knew someone that I knew, and I would give it like a week or 2. And if they never responded to me, then I'd contact the second person. There's also a thing on LinkedIn. It's called LinkedIn Premium. It's like a little gold IN for LinkedIn. So those are people that are actually paying for LinkedIn. So if someone's paying for it, they're probably on it every single day, or it's on their phone. So those are great people you want to contact because they're probably really, really active. And also when you want to contact someone, you want to make your ask clear. So a practice that I used was, when I was messaging someone, it's, hi, my name is Mitzi. I see we're connected because we both went to Cal, or we're both from Oakland. We both love baseball, whatever that is. I was hoping I could get 20 minutes out of your day to just learn a little bit more about your role or the company. So the reason, I think the biggest part of that for me is the 20 minutes. You want to be very clear what your ask is and how long it is. Because there are people that will cut you off once that 20-minute mark happens, right? And, you can practice what that looks like. If you're like faster on your ask, it can be 15 minutes. Because some people just don't want to, they just don't talk a lot, right? If you're going to take a little bit longer, ask for 30 minutes, but it's about being respectful of their time. And then from that is having a few questions ready to go that you're going to ask them. So what I did, actually have like a notebook, and I had like 10 or 20 questions that I know I can always ask during an information interview. So I go through that person's profile, probably check their Facebook too, or just whatever social media I can find about them, I'll Google them, and I'll write down a few questions on there that I can ask them. So it could be like, I saw you were at a company only for 2 months. Can you let me know like why you transitioned so fast out of that company? So you're also trying to learn about company culture at the same time. And for me, company culture is also like diversity. So when I would talk to someone, it's like, what does diversity look like for you? Or, it looks like you identify as Latina as well. How has that experience been for you at a company? Or how are they supporting diverse folks at this time? And the answer might be they're not. And and if you're ready for that, then that's fine. And the answer might be that they are, and that might entice you even more. But you want to remember that your goal in this call is to ask for a referral. So for a lot of folks, if you don't know what a referral is, it's pretty much you're asking this person to put in a good word for you at a company. And what you have to remember with referrals, they win a lot too. So there's actually companies that if they refer someone and that person actually goes through the process and gets hired, that person who made the initial referral can earn money. And money meaning $1,000 to $5,000 sometimes too. So, if you feel like, oh, I don't know if I should ask them, you're actually kind of giving them this golden ticket of being like, yo, you might make $1,000 off of me for just doing something that takes 2 minutes. So think about it in your mindset. If someone would ask you that, you'd be like, heck yeah, man, I'll refer you. I don't care. And you do want to care, but like but if that's something that you feel comfortable doing yourself, you should feel comfortable asking it as well too. And of course there's, some people are more direct, like, do you mind just offering a referral? Or you might, if you don't feel comfortable about it, you can say, can I send you my resume? And if you think I'd be a great fit for this role, do you mind doing a referral for me? And then you just follow up with them later. So you just have to remember that little ask, and sometimes it's like a really hard ask that you have to do internally because it feels like you're asking a lot, and something you don't feel comfortable doing can actually earn you a job and earn this other person a lot of money as well. So, okay, so now we're gonna move on a little bit to, negotiations, and I'll let Gustavo.
Mitzi, I did have a couple of things to add on that one too.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of LinkedIn, it's a great avenue. Emails, it's surprisingly, I don't know how people get my email sometimes, but from my company email, I see messages from students letting me know like, hey, I'll be at this conference. Are you going to be there as well? And that extra connection, it's empowering because I'm like, I'm not going to be there, but I know somebody who is, and I could connect you to them. Mm-hmm. So now they've already established that relationship. So when they do meet, it's already, you put a face to a name, you already established that relationship, and it's a higher chance of getting in. So it's finding those avenues, those back doors. The other thing is when you do go to companies, when you do go to career fairs and you meet folks and they give you your business card, establish that relationship. It's so easy. Just email them, let them know you're interested. Years down the line, that same email, you bring it back up and you're like, hey, do you remember me? Like I was there. Here's that email that I messaged you back when. And I did that a lot for universities. There's a lot of recruiters, for example, at Duke and UNC, that I had done that my freshman year. And then when I was applying to grad school, I messaged them again and they remembered like, oh yeah, like you so happen to be in this organization. And that relationship were like, don't worry, like you got the waiver, you got the free waiver. And then here's how you use it. So without even me having to ask them like, oh, can I get one? So those relationships open a lot of avenues. And the last one, so I didn't have the highest GPA when I applied. It wasn't the hottest. I was an engineer who was never sure if I wanted to pursue that. And for full transparency, I had like a 2.7 at one point. And it wasn't until I studied abroad and it opened those perspectives up for me that I raised it up to a sufficient 3. And I knew I had to do extra work to get into these universities. So what I would do is email professors before even submitting my applications. So that taking that extra step, for example, in industry, this could work in industry too, but I would email them and then they would be the ones accepting me to the university. They were like, hey, listen, I think you'll be a great fit for my lab. I'm not sure if the university said yes to you, but I'll let them know. And that's how I got into Cornell, because my application wasn't really seen, I guess. And that professor contacted me for an interview and he's like, hey, I don't know why your application wasn't in the package, but I'm looking at it here and are you free to talk? Like in like 30 minutes, the applications are due tomorrow. Like we decide tomorrow who we accept and don't. I like you, let's make this happen. And that would not have happened if those emails didn't occur, that extra step. So yeah, taking those extra steps for connections.
Yeah, right now when you're talking, Gustavo, I wanted to highlight a few things. So I think we didn't talk about is like connecting with people in person now. Like this is a great opportunity for you all to like find each other. I'm assuming you can see who's on this call and like add them on LinkedIn, right? You just never know. And like that's your message could just be like, I was told by Mitzi to add you. Like that's fine, but you just never know in like 5 to 10 years when this person's gonna come up. And you know, I think I found myself going through a lot of that. Like when I was working at Cal, there were people that later on also worked at Cal, and I was like, I think I had a class with you when I was a freshman. And they're like, I think I did too. And then you just help each other out professionally in a lot of different ways. And I think also, you know, Gustavo brought up career fairs, and I will say they're hella scary. Like, let's be real. Like, it's hella scary. You go in and then you're like, these lines are full of people. Like, I'm dressed in like jeans and a t-shirt. Like, I got to go to class and make sure I eat. But you know it's important and you know you want to be there. And I will say, like, I think a lot of the big companies, like, you know, you see that and you might have that nudge that you want to go there. But these small companies or places that have no lines are also a great opportunity. And if you're a little bit more introvert or maybe you don't feel as secure about your resume or that you know how to sell yourself, like, use them as a tool to practice. You might just go up and say, like, hey, you know, I want to learn a bit more about your company. I don't really know what it is. What do you all do? And that's a very fair question. I've gone to a ton of career fairs. That was actually my job for like the last 2 years, was to go to career fairs and recruit women to do some of the work that I was doing. And I actually would go to them because I just had them. For me, it was important to just like watch them and make them feel comfortable. But, you know, it's also asking like, oh, where did you go to school? Or how did you get into this company? So what are simple questions? And of course, you don't want them to be closed questions. So no yes or no's, like something that you can pull out of them. You might see them wearing like a cup. Maybe they're drinking out of a water bottle that says like the Warriors. And you might be like, oh, you're a Warriors fan too? Like, so am I. Like, what brings people together? Sports, music, schools. You know, if you're from LA, that's like everywhere, you know? So like there's ways that you can find connections to just start a conversation, and that's how they'll remember you, you know? Like they'll be like, oh man, that girl that asked me about Harry Potter. I'm like, yeah, that was me. I asked you about Harry Potter. And you know, so how do you make this conversation comfortable, and how do you get their information and connect with them too? And the way you have to think about it is like, you have nothing to lose, right? And in the end, these recruiters, they're looking for you. Like they have numbers that they have to meet to say, we're finding students from different schools, different backgrounds, different experiences. So they need you. And I think as a student, sometimes we think that we need them more. So hopefully like y'all can practice framing that mindset out. And I think the biggest thing is practice, right? I want to make sure like we leave space right now to ask any questions about this, about referrals and stuff like that.
Yeah, hi. I actually had a question about the referrals. Like, I was wondering if you could reiterate like how you phrase asking for a referral, because like that is definitely one thing that I just haven't figured out how to do it. It's like, oh, can I have a referral? Like you mentioned something about like sending a resume or something. I was wondering if you could say that again.
Mm-hmm. So what I would probably suggest is first is to write down how would you ask for referral, right? Because next thing you know, if your sentence is like this long, like that's not going to work, because then you end up just reading off of that. So you need to have that. You need to be able to ask for a referral verbally and written, right? So verbally, something I might say is, like let's say you had a 20-minute interview. You're talking to them and you say, I really had I had a lot of interest in this company. Like, I really like this role. Maybe it's not for me now. Can I contact you for a referral in the future? Because that might be the truth, right? At that point, you might not want that company. And if it is something that you really like, you might say, I really, really like this role. I feel like I'd be a great fit. Everything you told me actually entices me even more to work here and to work with people like you. Do you happen to have a referral process? So that's like, you're not actually saying like, give me a referral, even though that's what you want, but you're asking, is there a process? And the reality is some places don't have a process, but if they do, you also want to ask, what does that process look like? So to give different examples, some companies' referral process is you do not apply on their website. You actually, the person that works there will send you a special link and you apply to that link. Or the person that refers you will say, send me your resume. I have to submit it through a different system. So that is something you do want to think about when you're applying to jobs, is sometimes you applying directly to that website, that company, is not the best option for the referral, because it's like extra work that needs to happen. But asking what is a process, asking, do they feel comfortable offering you a referral? So like that's, you're not like, you're kind of leaving the ice in the middle for them. If they say no, it's kind of friendly, like maybe not now, or I don't feel like it. But or you could say like, do you mind if I email you my resume to look it over a little bit more? And if you think I'm a great fit, is a referral possible? So
Thanks so much for that. I really appreciate it.
yeah, and it's scary. Don't get me wrong, man. It's hecka scary. Like I had to do a lot of that even this year when I was like transitioning roles. But I would say a big practice is write it, make it yours, make it your language, and like you do want to practice it. And I know that's like always weird, but like you can practice it with companies you don't really want to work there. You're just like, I just want to meet people that like live in the Bay maybe, or like are at a new city that you might want to live at in the future, or a company you want to go to like in the far future. You just want to practice. Yeah. Do other folks have questions about this? Okay. So Gustavo, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So if you made it to the point where you've met all these folks and they said, yes, we love you, here's an offer. And then somebody else is like, here's another offer. So you have a bunch of offers now. But the one that you really care about, the one that's really enticing to you hasn't, there's opportunities for you to push for the company, letting them know like, hey, listen, I'm really looking forward to working with you, but I really need to know if I'm going to, did you accept me or not? And that's another, it's kind of daunting, but you could go ahead and speed up that process, letting them know like, hey, I know there's a lot of people you're looking at, but I have offers already, and you're the company that I want to work for, so let me know as soon as you can. So that push is okay. You can also ask the company to slow down. If they're letting you know like, hey, we need to know by like 2 weeks. Like I told you now, you got 2 weeks. We're looking forward to your response. In that case, you can also say, hey, listen, I'm looking at other opportunities as well. Maybe don't phrase it like that. Maybe say, hey, I need extra time, which is what I did too, because I was applying to grad school. And I told them at Eden, I was like, hey, listen, I'm interested. I've been trying to pursue this graduate degree. I need a little time to contemplate this. And they're willing to extend it. They were willing to extend it for 2 more weeks. So don't feel afraid to push or slow down the process. When you actually do get the job and you're at the table and you're trying to negotiate, it's important to understand that the person across from you is also, don't be mean to them. Like you don't want to shut them down completely. If they make you an offer and you're like, listen, that's not good enough for me, let them know like, why isn't it? Like, help them understand that you've actually received better offers, or that you want to have a bit more flexibility, and that you're willing to do other things for them if they offer you that, for example. So help them understand a little bit more. And with that being said, it's also important to understand it from their perspective. So if you're already in the company, for example, and you've been there for a year and you want a raise, or you want more vacation, or you want different working hours, it's important to understand that if you're working in a team,
they're viewing it as, I can't let you just have it and not the rest of the team. And if that's the case, that's perfect, because you've noticed that that's the case. So then you try to navigate other ways around it by letting them know, hey, Jose over there doesn't want to work on Saturday. I could take his shift on Saturday if you give me an extra vacation day. So you try to navigate those doors to open up their constraints. Let's see. And then what are you negotiating? So for this one, you don't want to negotiate several things in series. You don't want to say, cool, now that I got a raise, here's another thing that I also want, or here's another thing that I want, because then that feels like an endless cycle through the negotiation status. So you would want to frame them all, bring them in, and letting them know, like, these are what are more important to me. So I have a family. I can't come in at 9 in the morning because I'm dropping off my kids. So can I come in at 11 or at 10, and I'll stay later? And I also think that I deserve a higher pay raise because of the performance, the projects that I'm doing. Seeing as we only have like 2 weeks vacation, this year I have family coming over from El Salvador, and I want to spend more time with them. Would 3 weeks be more doable? And with all this is what I can offer you. So you bring up these conversations, you bring up these options all in one chunk. And here's the thing, that the money is always great. Getting a pay raise is also great, but it's the entire package that you have to notice. So if they're not capable of giving you the extra funds, but they're capable of giving you other opportunities, like higher flexibility, which is great. Like, you don't have to punch in at 9 and then punch out at 5. You have higher flexibility to take care of your own projects, to lead your own teams. Other companies might offer you greater money, but then the responsibilities that it comes with limits you from spending time with what really matters sometimes, like, or what really matters most of the time, your kids, your family, your cat, whatever that may be. So understanding the whole deal when you're negotiating is important.
Yeah, I think, like, adding to Gustavo's list right now, so, you know, when clearly salary is like the biggest thing that folks, I guess, start to negotiate, but time is like a big part of it. So many of you are remote now, you know, maybe you're not like, I'm not about this life as a student, but you might be about this life as a professional. So that's something you might want to think about, is asking for the flexible hours so that you can actually work from home a lot more, or at least like work different hours. I think some things that are important to consider too is, you know, what are other costs associated with a job, right? So if I'm living in Oakland and I get a job in San Francisco, I need to pay for BART and parking and Uber and all these other things. So how much is that going to cost me a year? And is that really worth this job? It might not be. I might say, like, that's not actually worth my job or my time, because I know that's going to take 2 to 3 hours of my day out. And I think, you know, stocks are always important if a company offers that. So of course, learning what that is and what that means. Signing bonuses are something that companies have, especially if they're trying to rush you to sign an offer. And maybe you're like, yeah, I'm going to sign it anyways, but they don't need to know that. But you can ask them, like, okay, can we do a signing bonus if I sign by tomorrow? And that could be like an extra $1,000 or $2,000, just something additional that you're going to have there. And I think with negotiation, it's also important to know, like, everything you ask for, they might say no or not now. It's important for you to ask them, okay, can this conversation happen again in 6 months? Or can it happen again in a year? And with all of these terms that you all agree on, you always want to have it in writing. So the recruiter might be like, yeah, you want $1,000 for your home office? Cool. So if they don't give you a policy that's written, you're going to email them and say, just to confirm, you said I would get $1,000 for my home office if I sign this. And can I get so an email is something that's going to really help you out. Yeah, so home office is one thing. There was something else that came to my head, but I think another thing that was important to highlight is you can negotiate if you have one offer on the table. So sometimes that's a real case. You only have one job offer and you're just like, heck yeah, this is what I want. This is what I need. Like, I'm going to sign it tonight. You have to negotiate that for sure. And so, like, a story that I'll associate with this is, so pretty much I'm helping one of my old students right now with negotiation because she actually studied at Cal. She was a Latina math major, and she got an engineering job for a company. So when she got that engineering job offer, they offered her $90,000. You know, in her eyes, that's amazing. That's a ton of money, right? She's from Fresno. Parents don't make a lot of money. Like, she's never seen money like that. So she actually went to talk to a lot of people about the offers, and everyone told her, you should be very grateful for what you were offered. You have to accept it. Like, not everybody's ever going to get that amount of money. You have to accept it. And though, yes, those are her feelings, and yes, she was grateful, she still should have negotiated. You know, she's never seen money like that, and I get that, but she still should have negotiated. So what ended up actually happening to her is she was at that company already for 2-3 years, and she actually found out that she was making 20 to 30K less than all of her counterparts in her same role. So that actually took a personal toll on her, where she started feeling that she's not being valued. And, you know, when she would talk to the company, at some point, they can make all these changes because there's certain policies that are in companies too. So as much as they would give her a little bit more here, a little bit more there, she never felt like she was getting paid the same amount that she deserved. So, you know, after I've known her for many years. So this year I worked with her a lot more on applying for different jobs and prepping for them. So when she got this new job offer, she pretty much just texted me during the whole process of her talking to the recruiter. And we were able to negotiate her higher salary, higher stock, making sure she can work anywhere in the United States because she doesn't know where she's going to be living at in a few years, and get all the terms that she needed to. So now she actually is making like 30 to 40,000 more than she was making before. And she actually feels like she's valued now. And that's the most important thing to her. Like, to go to work to say, I'm getting paid what I'm valued for the work that I'm doing was very, very important to her. So, you know, and in her situation too, she asked for a little bit more kind of out of nowhere. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how it's going to go. Like, it kind of just like blurted out. But that blurting out moment for her, she ended up getting an additional 5K than other numbers we were talking about in like 30 seconds. So you also have to think about, if your ask, is something that you do in 30 seconds, 1 minute, you might get paid 5 to 10 to 15, 20K for that. And you're never going to earn that much money in a minute or in 30 seconds too. So I think really thinking about that process. Okay, so that's kind of like all we had about slides. I want to make sure to show you all a little like the LinkedIn stuff. These are just kind of some of the key points that we wanted to make sure we highlight, is that, you know, you all are worth your monies. So whatever money you can think about that you think you're worth, like, go towards that goal. For many of us, we don't know what that goal is. Something that was like important to me was that when I was younger, my goal was to make more money than my mom, and she was making 40K. So the moment I made over 40K, I really didn't know what my new goal was, but that's just like the life that I lived. And now I'm making more than 40K clearly, but, you know, setting up goals of what we think we're actually worth. And network with everyone that you can now. Just add them on LinkedIn, add them wherever you need to. And with the biggest thing with this is it's very new and it can be very scary, and that's totally okay. And that's comfortable. So I know we only have like 2 minutes. I'm thinking the LinkedIn is it is going to be beneficial for folks, or we can save it for questions, or we can open the time for questions. Folks. Let's see.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
I'm always kind of wary about like expanding my network on LinkedIn if it's people who I don't know really. Like, I'm worried that it's gonna be like a Facebook thing where I'm like, who is this person? Why are we friends? So
Yeah.
I've been a little bit like cautious about it on LinkedIn, and I don't know. Do you think that it's like I'm looking at it different or wrong, I guess?
No, I think that's fair. I think it's fair because I have people on my list, you know, then I won't show their names, but that I haven't added because I'm just like, where are you coming from? Where they're like in a whole opposite field, you know, they're like pharmaceutical and like who knows where I'm like nowhere near that. But sometimes it is someone that maybe we have a lot of friends in common. So I'm like, why, you know, I'm like, well, maybe we'll add them. And actually what I have experienced, so of course you want to filter that out a little bit, but there's been times where I added someone just because we had a lot of connections, but maybe our industries weren't connected. And I was like, I don't really know how we're going to be connected in this way, but they actually post a lot on LinkedIn. And that's how I find out about like jobs or internships or events, because they're super active on there. And that's what some of them are trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the reality is kind of like Facebook, you can add them and take them off. If you're just like, yeah, this person's like not really helpful in any way, just like, you know, and just not unfriend them, but unconnect with them in the future.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, totally fair. Yeah, I was gonna show my list, but I was like, maybe not. Of people I just have sitting there. Okay. Are there other questions that folks have? Or you can either chat them or unmute yourself.
Okay, I don't mean to hog, but I have one more question.
Oh no, go
So,
for it.
like when it comes to negotiating, do you think that like if you get pushback um, from asking for a higher pay, if they use the pandemic as an example, like, oh, we can't, we don't have the budget right now. I don't know if I should push a little more or if I should be like understanding about the pandemic and budgets and stuff. So I don't know what your thoughts on that would be.
Yeah, I think there's different components to that. Part of it is, I think it's a valid reason for companies to say that, and I expect many of them to say that. I think if it's not going to come in money through salary, are there other things that they can offer you a little bit more? And that also might be no. It might be like, no, you're already getting all of this. So, and if that is the case, then, you can ask like, okay, is there something that we can have a conversation about in 6 months? So when we see how things go, which that might also be the situation. I think if you're already in a company and you're trying to ask for more, let's say you and your manager had committed that in, October 2020, you were going to get a raise. And now they're like, sorry, the pandemic, you're not getting the raise. Have things in writing of like when this conversation is going to happen again. But, if you're also very frustrated, finding other jobs is still a thing. And I think you do have to think about the pros and cons of transitioning. I will say like my personal experience, so I transitioned roles this year, and my new job, I'm actually making more money and more flexibility than I was making in my old job. So there are a lot of opportunities out there as well. A lot of new companies, are creating new jobs, or companies that maybe now with the pandemic, they're like booming. But you do have to understand that sometimes they are going to tell you no. And if it is because of the pandemic, you want to make sure to bring that conversation back.
Got it. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, so we want to talk about, okay, folks on our LinkedIn. I think our LinkedIns and emails are going to be sent to everyone after the call so that y'all can look for us and find us.
Let's see. There's another question here. Cool. Yeah, I think with this one, they were saying, how can we hone in our skills or sell them? With this one, it is mostly like building your narrative, essentially letting them know that the projects that you've done, the experiences that you've had, have essentially built you to the person where you are today, and how that fits into their company. So, and this might be very different for various cases, but when I interviewed for Eaton, I didn't really know what the company was, but that personability, when I went up to the recruiter, it was mostly like, oh, I see that you're renewable energy, wind turbine, solar energy. I'm really interested in knowing more about you. And that conversation was more of like, oh, okay, so like our company is around the country. Are you willing to travel? And then from that, it was like, yes, I love to travel. Let's make it happen. And the whole time we just talked about studying abroad, traveling, and that's how I got my foot in the door. And then that's how I moved on to the conversations. But it's mostly building upon like, okay, this is what I love to do, and this is what I can do. And in your stories, you always got to mention like the qualitative and quantitative. So what did you learn? And then how much did you produce? Like, was it, I helped 30 students in this conference where they've never had experience of visiting a company, and we took them there and they saw it and they loved it. Yeah, I built this system that follows light through photovoltaics. So various different ways to navigate that. But yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the quantifying. So like you kind of have to add numbers to everything, like everything. So the way you should look at it is like someone might look at your resume for like 30 seconds and the numbers are going to matter a lot. So if, let's say, you're doing marketing for EOP STEM and you had a webinar earlier in the semester and that, only brought in like 10 people. But then the next webinar, your marketing was even better, because you used other tools, then that brought in 20 people. And then let's say this last one brought in 40 people. So you would quantify that, be like, I increased it by 100%. In one semester, I increased attendance and webinars through marketing using Instagram, Facebook, blah, blah, whatever listservs, by 100% too. So what tools are you using? You always want to talk about start using Zoom, which like everyone is now, but other tools at the same time, but put numbers to that as well too. If you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of numbers on there on like the work that I'm doing of increases. So if any of you are doing work, especially like volunteer work, or even, you know, if you're like running a decal or like teaching class, you always want to quantify or think about what's your baseline. So like this moment right now, what are your numbers looking like there? So is it 0 funds? Is it 0 people? You know, like if it's a 0, like that's fine. But in the end, what did that become? Did that become a lot more people, a lot more impact? Did you save time? Time is money in these companies. So if you're able to reduce the time spent on XYZ, that looks like dollars for a lot of companies too.
I had a question for Gustavo. So you mentioned that you sent an email to a professor, which got you into your grad school program. Like, how did you start that email conversation, and like, what kind of things did you mention?
No, that's awesome. So it was very personalized. I reached out to, so I applied to multiple schools. I over like 15 universities, only paid for like 3 because of the methods that I told you before, where it was like I asked folks from my connections way back when for letters of free waivers, and they were willing to. So with these professors, I read their research papers. I went on their websites and I saw how their research related to mine. I'm interested in energy, specifically using thermal electrics, and that's what they were doing. So I would read the research. I would say what I could do for them, and what's in my past that I've done that could also benefit the lab. And that connection, for a lot of professors, I would get messages from them. And some schools, like for some reason, UC Santa Barbara said no to me, but the professor reached out to me that I did contact, and she's like, hey, I see the university said no, but I see your background, I see your training, and I'm hoping that you can join my lab. Like, I have extra funds now and I would love you to join. And this was after the university said no. And that's the time where I had already said yes to Cornell. So reaching out to them, knowing what they do, how you could best support them, and essentially where you're trying to achieve in that program. And you can do that the same way with a company, letting them know, this is what I've done before, this is why I love your company. And this is what I tell a lot of folks who are applying to Eden, who contact me the same way. I don't know how they get my email, but they get it. And they're like, hey, I'm at the SHIP conference today. I need recommendations. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, no problem at all. Like, these are the type of questions that are going to ask you. Like, be prepared. Make sure to, again, quantify everything that you do. Expand. I've had cases where students don't. It's just like short answers. But definitely get to know the person that you're contacting. And then, yeah, I think that really helped me a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think a lot about, like, at Cal, like GSIs are actually like a really, really great resource and to find connections with faculty. And I know, like, it's really hard to talk to faculty, right? A lot of faculty will like not want to talk to you. I'm going to assume with Zoom it might be even harder, but you know, it's thinking about how can you get your network in the door with them. So in my experience, when I was at Cal, I actually did research for 2 years with one of the professors I had. And the reason it happened was because I made it very clear in one of my classes I was taking that I'm from Oakland, you know, like something I'm very proud from, the background I come from. And then ended up being that they were doing research on the city of Oakland too. So then that's why they brought me in, because they're like, we need your insights into like how the city works and things like that. And of course I don't know everything about the city, but that was just a little bit more value to them than someone that didn't know anything about the city. So then I did one project with them. So then it's like connection with another project. And then you're working with the faculty. And sometimes you're only meeting with the faculty a little bit, but you know, you're going to go turn in reports to them. And that's when you have conversations. And, you know, a lot of them, like if they decorate their offices, those are talking points. And I think that's something you need to take advantage of. So, you know, like Gustavo can talk about this because he was actually my student in Summer Bridge. This is how long I've known Gustavo, since you were in high school. My office was super decorated with stuff. And the reason I did that was because everything was a conversation starter. There's always something in my office for a student to say, like, what is that? Where do you get that from? Okay, can you explain that? That looks cool. So professors, you know, some of them are doing something very similar. And it's like having conversations with them, because the reality is if you do want to go to grad school, you do need faculty letter recommendations. If you're lucky, your GSI became faculty, which is always going to be an option. That might happen too. So how do you keep that connection there with them so that you can do more work with them in the future? And I actually ended up getting my job through a faculty I was doing research with. I told him, I was like, you know, I kind of think I want to work at EOP. You know, do you know Fabrizio? And he's like, yeah, I know him. He literally pulled out his phone, called him, And then I had an interview the next day for to be a graduate intern there too. So you just never know what can happen. But it's scary. Faculty are scary. You know, they're not the nicest. Like, let's be real. You know, sometimes they're the ones that are real short, and you're like all ready to go and have a conversation, and they're like, "What do you want?" And that's okay too. But really think about like office hours now. I have no idea what it would look like in Zoom now if there are less people going or more people going. But if it feels like less people are going because they're asking you all the time to go, just go. And you can ask like, "Oh, I've seen some of the research you've done. What did that look like, or what does that even mean?" Or like, "Oh, one of the books you mentioned, you know, I'm really connected to that because of XYZ story." I actually had one of my students at Cal that she's Oaxacan, and one of the textbooks used in the class had pictures of her family in Oaxaca. So like, you know, you read a textbook and you're like, that's your uncle and the tribe and place she's from. So it's like, you know, that's like an interesting conversation starter to have too. So they just want to talk. So how do you find your way to go in that door to talk to them?
I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, you mentioned specifically that being humble could benefit us, but I still don't really see how, especially since I feel like being humble usually means that you're scared to like, I don't know, ask for help and like look for these resources. So if you could expand on that.
You want to start, Gustavo?
Yeah, let's see. So I'm kind of like, it's weird. I'm kind of a very like toned down kind of person, but I can also be like very out there. It just depends on the situation. When it comes to these types of situations, I'm definitely more toned down. And when I would talk to my managers about like responsibilities that I had or things that I wanted to do with the company, it was always like the data. Like I would always be like, this is how many hours I'm working. This is how many projects I've been producing. Is it okay if I take this extra week to go travel? And what really helped was that my first year, I was really close to the manager. So whenever it came to these types of conversation, I didn't have to really push back too much, but it was more like, here's everything that I've done so far. This is what I'm looking to do. And is it possible? Like I'm willing to work all these extra hours, but I really need this extra vacation. And in that way, humility helped me to build that relationship, not necessarily in the negotiation process. And I think Mitzi will expand on that, but building that relationship in the beginning to make him more aware of my situation and be like, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, go take that extra week, enjoy it. I'll take care of whatever projects you have. And in the meantime, when you come back, there's gonna be a bunch of emails. Just be ready to answer them all. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also important, like right now, you know, Gustavo and I are like, I guess loud, very like type A and stuff like that. But we're not like this all the time. And also the person you talk to, like who potentially could be your manager or recruiter, they also could be nothing like us. So like for those of you that are maybe like a little bit more quieter, you know, there's recruiters that are also just quieter. There's managers that are very quiet and calm too. So, you know, just like it can feel scary for students, sometimes the managers, they're also scared too, because they also don't know how to manage the situation. And part of it is, I think, thinking about what do you need for you to feel so confident in what you're saying? And part of it is writing things down. Like there's been times where I literally like write my key points down, like my 5 things in order. And like, I'll read them and be like, okay, today we're going to talk about like XYZ. And like, I've done this and this and this, you know, and sometimes they need to know that because there are like managers that they just don't do a good job of taking care of their people. And it's not because they don't want to, they just get so mumble jumbled and a lot of things. So you have to slow them down on all of that. I think with the humble part too, something that I always would like remember with working with EOP students and myself as a student is, I wouldn't always say I was the smartest. Like that's not the language I feel like I would use a lot, but I'm really hardworking. And that's something I feel really confident in saying about. If you ask me that, I was like, I have the values to work hard for everything, but what have I done to showcase that I'm hardworking? And that's what you need to think about. That's like the humbleness that comes in, right? So like, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Did you commit extra time to a project because it was really important to you and this was the outcome? That's something that might be really important to you. So I think thinking about that skill set, but don't let like, I think when people are really quiet or shy, that's not a weakness. You need every type of person to be successful. So really taking all those things into account is really important to you. And you know, you might have to remind people if you think people are seeing you as like really quiet, like I am really quiet, but I'm the first one in, and I get all my work done in 2 hours compared to other people that take 5. You don't want to throw people under the bus, but just say like other team members, I'm getting it done much faster. My experience is, much more eclectic because I've worked with all these different products in the past. So like gentle reminders, like that's sometimes ways that you can bring things up, because if you feel like you're like in the shadows of things, you need to highlight that a little bit more. And you don't have to highlight to everybody, just the decision makers. That's who you have to think about too. If we're still here, if folks have other questions, or you can like put it on the chat. I know we're answering some on there too. Okay. So I think, I know we're like hell over time and we do have a few folks on. I kind of do want to share my LinkedIn, like navigation, like really fast. So just folks see that. And of course, like, Gustavo and I are here at any point to contact you all so we can stay on the line a little bit longer. And you all can email us or find us on LinkedIn. So, but while I'm doing this, like if anything's coming up, please like unmute yourself or do it on chat. Like we're super flexible with all of this. So just so you all see, like this is my LinkedIn. Like I definitely go on here to look at what people are doing and talking about too. So sometimes that may mean like I like it or I comment on something. You can get notifications as well. So if someone tells me that it's their birthday or they got a new job or something like that, like I'll go back in and I'll like comment on those type of things. So a practice that I actually did with a recruiter from Workday is I had to review my LinkedIn profile in like seconds, because that's really what's happening a lot of the time. So if y'all remember during the call, I said there's like a gold like LinkedIn image on here. So if you see this on here, this means somebody paid for it. Well, I didn't pay for this, I got it for free, but like somebody paid for it, So these are people that are investing and they're probably on it all the time. You do want to make sure the back of your image has something on there. It's like a default one, but you can change it to something that's important to you. I've actually gotten a lot of compliments on this because these colors, you don't see them that much on LinkedIn. So that's always like a conversation starter. And just in general, this has been a practice that's being used a lot right now on LinkedIn. So instead of being like student at Cal, like that doesn't tell me much about you. It just tells me you're a student at Cal, which is great. But what are other things that are really important to you, right? So these are keywords. And actually the way I got some of these is I like looked at other people that had like really dope profiles and I just pull the words that I like from there and I put them all together. Like that's totally fine to do. So just to kind of keep going on here. So this is like a little bit about me. I actually do need to like update this. Some people are like a little bit more extensive, but like mine, what was important to me is to highlight something about me personally too. So like I love Oakland A's baseball and traveling the world. So those conversations happen. This is something that you can do is like feature different things of what you're involved in. So like I just had a article posted out about me at the Cal Alumni Association. So I highlighted this. I have a fellowship. I presented at a national conference with Julian. So these are the posts that I've been posting that are important to me. So I put them at the top so people see that. And this is just something you get if you pay, but y'all don't have to pay. But if you look at this, I think this is what's really important, activity. So it's how active am I on LinkedIn? Some of it, like you see here, is just me commenting. And these comments are actually, they're like auto-generated. So like when someone says like, they got a new job, it gives me like the 3 options and I just click it and then just puts it out there. So I don't really have to type anything. Like this is the post that I put a little while ago about the presentation we're doing today. So this is something that recruiter was like, oh, you're really active. They're looking at all of this. Then I have my roles on here. So I have different roles, some that are paid, some that are not paid. But like, if you look at a lot of my roles, there's numbers associated to it. So it's either numbers, percentages, monies, attendees. So you always want to make sure that there's some numbers associated to it. And even my LinkedIn, like I know I could do better on it. I just like haven't, but I know I could definitely do that. And I have like old roles on here from like even when I was in grad school. I think that's the other one. And then, so I have all my volunteer stuff. So I'm going to assume like as students, you all have a lot of volunteer experience. So you always want to make sure you put it down here. And what I would say are key things is when you're applying to be a volunteer somewhere, like always save the job description or the volunteer application or whatever it is, because honestly, when you have to write this down, you're like, I don't even know what to write. Like, I don't remember. You can just like copy and paste it from that, or Like in some of these cases, I find other people that are doing the same volunteer work, and then I just copy and paste their language on there too. So, you know, you're trying to make your life easier. But this is where I was talking about when it comes to like skills. And so like I have certain skills on here. So you can see like higher education. So like my high ones are higher education, event planning, and community outreach. So these are people that they have gone in and they said like, yes, we can verify her. So, and sometimes you do want to ask that people, you want to ask people like, hey, I really want to get this job related to like community outreach. Tell all your friends to go on and say like, yes, 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 you have community outreach as a skill set, so that this can get bumped up. And if I need to add a new skill, you know, I can just go on here, and then I can go on here and be like, okay, no one says I'm good at Facebook or Google Suite, but you know, if I need to take that out, then I can put something in that I feel might be more important. And I'll show you all a little bit about how to find these as well. So like these are different things. And some of them are tricky, like I have to have a Spanish and then a bilingual one. Sometimes LinkedIn just works like that. And recommendations. So this is where, you know, I've had some of my old employers or colleagues write in one that I've written, and I actually have to do 2 more soon. But it's important to have some recommendations on here. So if any of you are like doing an internship now, or you have a job and you're going to transition, it's a good opportunity for you to ask folks now to be like, hey, I'm going to be leaving by the end of the year. Or let's say, you know, when it's a summer, it's going to be the summer, you're going to have a new job. Ask them to write something on here, and then you should write something for them too. And then these are just some projects, a lot of presentations I've done at conferences, courses, and things like that. So what I want to show you all right now really quickly is these skill sets here, and these knowledge things. So let's say I'm looking for jobs. Hopefully I find a good example. And if not, we might need to play around with it too. Sorry, y'all, I did like not have a good example ready to go. Okay, that's not a good example. Okay, so skill sets like these are sometimes listed under jobs like right here. Like when you see details, like it'll be like a long list. I'll look for another example right now, and it'll check them off if you have them. So I think that's like kind of what I was talking about, that if you find a job that maybe like you really like, and you know you don't have all the skill sets, so you see that there's a list here and you're like, yeah, I didn't check off all of those, that's a good opportunity for you to take that skill set, go put it on your a skill that you do have on your profile. Or if you're like really far from this, then it's a skill set you want to work on a little bit more too. Yeah, sorry I don't have a better example of that part, but I hope that at least teaches you a little bit more about like how this works, or how LinkedIn works too. And then I want to say there's a part here, I have to remember where it's at, where you notify folks if you're looking for jobs. There's like a button somewhere. And if you can't find it, like just Google it, you'll find it. But there's like a way to navigate on here to say, yeah, you're open to opportunities as well. But do folks have any questions about like LinkedIn in general? Or anything we've talked about really? Gustavo and I are here.
I do have a question. So kind of related to how you mentioned earlier, how you worked with a student who was a math major, and then like you helped her negotiate salaries and stuff. I'm also a math major, and I don't feel like the skill set that I have, that I learned in my math classes, relate to any of these like real world skills that are required. Mm-hmm. Like some of the skills, like the ones like that are on LinkedIn and stuff. So it's really hard for me to kind of like get a sense of whether I'll be like skilled enough to, you know, work at this place, or, you know, like things like that. It's very difficult. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of overwhelming for me, I guess.
Yeah, I think with fields like math,
so,
you know,
like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you for sure. Like, part of the work that I did with EOP STEM is I actually like advised mostly STEM students for a long time. So I totally hear the math part, and being a woman in math, like there's not a ton either. I will say when it comes to some technical careers, you do want to learn a little bit more about what do they ask for in a job or internship application. So one of the things that really comes to mind is like a GitHub. Like for some companies, they ask you for like a GitHub link. So that's where, and that's kind of, you know, for those that don't know, like you showcase your work on there. But if that's what you need to do, then you're pretty much, all the work you're doing in your classes, you just put it on a GitHub page. so you can have it on there, because they're going to want to see what kind of work do you have, because you know, that's beneficial for a company to be like, oh, he or she can do this type of work, or you know, they progress from like doing this type of work to like this more advanced work too. I think when it also comes down to like things to add down here, you know, or especially if you're a student, you might not have a lot of job stuff or internship on here, and that's fine. You might be a little bit more on like this volunteer part. But if you want to talk about like the specific courses you're taking, I think that's still really fair to do as a student. It's like listing what those look like too. And then you can list like the projects that you're working on, because I think with the math, because you do have to choose an emphasis, that's something I highlight too, because like the example I gave the student, she was a math major with the computer science emphasis. So technically, like if she just would have put she's a math major on anything, she wouldn't have gotten any engineering jobs too easily sometimes, because they didn't know her computer science. Because sometimes in some fields, they're like real cutthroat. Like you have to have certain language and certain majors. So it was important for her to highlight that too. I'm not a big person in regards to like posting GPA. I really don't think it matters at all. So I usually don't recommend folks to do that. I think it's more important to talk about like the work that you've been doing. And even if you're just like volunteering to stuff, like, or attending events and like with certain clubs, you can put that you're a member from there too. I think that's also fair. And you know what? Part of it is too, depending on what year you are, if you feel like you're just lacking certain experience, you know, that's like a calling to like bump things up a little bit too. And with COVID, like it's so flexible now. And I think companies will see that, grad schools will see that, like, you know, they're allowing pass, no pass grades to count for things like that. But if you know, like, I need experience in certain ways, like what can you do that's something small to help with that? So like I have an old student that she just helped with a 1-day code-a-thon. Like she volunteered 1 day, just, you know, 24 hours for it. And that was something she was able to add on her LinkedIn because of the company that she went to go, you know, volunteer with. So, you know, it's not a lot that's taken out of her, but she was able to help with that too. Gustavo, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so that's perfect. So with the code-a-thon, that's a perfect example when you feel like your background is not tailored to the organization you're interested in. You definitely want to incorporate what you've done in the past. So all these projects that you've done in your field, are these extracurriculars, and see how the leadership in that or the projects in that tailored to that specific company, because they always do. There's always some cross section that you could have. And I've spoken to a lot of friends who are engineers, and as an engineer, you learn how to use like MATLAB and like 3D design. So you're designing things in 3D, but then you go to work and then you're working with Excel. And it's like, what happened? Like, where's the shift? But you're still an engineer. With that being said, it's like the skills that you're learning at school, you're probably learning 10 times more than what you'll need in the real world. But it's important to tailor your story to what the company is looking for, specific to what your background you've had. So that they could say like, yeah, like they're a math major, but like Mitzi say, oh, their emphasis is in computer science. Cool, we need that. We need folks to code. You could code. Let's make it happen. So definitely tailor it to the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think verbalizing what you're doing is going to be a big part of it, because, you know, when you're going to interviews, you're talking. So if you know, if you're like, oh, I'm really good at this, and you know you're good, like you're like, I'm the best, man. I've been killing it on my classes, like. Maybe not all of them, but this one project, like I did the greatest. But if you can't put that into words to a recruiter or someone else, like they're not gonna know that. So I think it's also important to think about that, like this, and that's what if none of you have done like technical interviews, if you're like in the STEM space, you can look on like YouTube and stuff. Like there's a bunch of examples of technical interviews. Like what they care about is not actually the answers or your thought process. So if you're like hella quiet the whole time and you just say the answer is 7. I mean, like, yeah, 7, but like, I don't care about the 7. I care about everything. So you have to verbalize, like, I did this and I did this and I did that. And I'll also be like, wait, I would have done this, but I'm not sure if I should do A or B. But saying that out loud that you're not sure is what they want to see.
Exactly. Yeah. So I need to take qualifying exams as a PhD student in order to be considered a candidate. And that's exactly what Mitzi's saying. So the professors, it's going to be a panel. They're going to ask you questions and they know you don't know the answer. And if you're like, oh, I know this, and then you're doing some rubbish on the board, they'll see through that. But if you're able to navigate them, to be like, hey, I understand your field is in fluid dynamics. Like, what do you think? If I flow the field here, how would that look like? So then you're bouncing off ideas off of them as well. And they'll notice that too. They'll notice how you think, how you work the problem. even if you don't know it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I forgot. Oh, wait. Okay. So for recruiters, I feel like sometimes they look at like hundreds of people or have like a lot of interviews. So by the time they get to you, they're kind of like, I don't know, low on energy. They don't really seem that interested. So how do you like deal with that? Like, do you keep trying to be energetic so they can, or you do try to match their tone?
Yeah. No, I feel that. What I will say is I think right now with COVID, it's actually a really good opportunity for you all because a lot of these like free conferences are happening online and they do free career fairs. So I think like there's like a lesbians who tech conference happening soon, I believe, and they do like a free career fair there too. So all these like free career fairs that you see happening online, it's actually a really good way for you to go in and meet recruiters without this like big pressure of in person. And it's also companies you might not be used to at the same time too. So yeah, they might be tired and you might be tired too because you're just like, man, I talked to a bunch of people already today. Like, I don't know if I really want to talk to them anymore, but you know, you do need to make sure you take care of yourself. So if this was like in person, regular times, let's say a career fair, you know, if you need to go to the corner for a little bit, like play some game on your phone and then like recoup and be like, okay, I'm going to do like 3 more recruiters. Like that's totally fine. Like you should definitely do what you need to do. And sometimes like you're also gauging them. So like you might walk around a career fair and you're like, okay, that person like has not laughed one time. I'm not talking to that person. And you might be like, the other person seems like hella dope. Like you're like, they seem like they're really cool. You know, I think for a lot of people of color, they also might feel more connected to talking to a recruiter of color too. So if that's something that's important to you, that's important. Like you should go talk to them if they're going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable as well. But what I will say is like you have to have different strategies, and in the end, like they're, you know, it's their job to talk to everyone. And if they're short, sometimes you can't take it personal. You kind of have to just move on, and they'll let you know, like, you know what, you don't feel what you need right now. Like, let me move on to maybe come back in a year. And if they say that, you're like, okay, what's your email? I'll come back in a year, just like you said. But I would say at least like right now, because there's so many career fairs happening for free online for different folks, like, so you have to find your industry. So if you want to go to tech, there's a bunch of Latinos in tech stuff, right? Like women in tech stuff, you know, just different diversity things going on. And they all have these events and they're all sponsored by companies. Like this is how you meet a recruiter too. And a lot of companies right now are also trying to fill internships for summer 2021. So it's also like a good time for you to look into that. And even if you go on LinkedIn, so there's actually, they work with hashtags as well, you know, like other things, but if you like go on here and you could just put internships, right here, internships 2021, you're gonna get a bunch of stuff. So like, you know, this company, well, they're in Canada, like you're not tripping about that, but like, you know, you go through here and you're just like, oh, okay, like who's having something with internships? Because some companies are actually only posting things out here on LinkedIn. And so you can kind of look into a little bit more. You're like, hey, this is master's degree students. Like, that's not what I want. Because actually going to events is pretty expensive. So a lot of companies are trying to find like the cheaper way of like looking for interns. So they might just use LinkedIn too. So like think about like hashtags like this one, they wrote interns, internship. So you can just go on there. And then having like, you might have to use like 3 lines of communications to have a recruiter talk to you too. So that's something I personally would do. So if I know like someone maybe works at like Netflix, and I was like, I really want to work at Netflix, I might think about like 2 or 3 persons away that I can talk to them, be like, hey, I remember you mentioned you had a friend that works at Netflix maybe, and they're like, oh yeah, let me contact my friend who contacts another friend, and then they contact you with the recruiter. So the process might be a little bit complicated, but you want to use these different skill sets to be able to talk to them.
Yeah, and when you're trying to gauge their energy level, it's definitely people to people interactions. Mm-hmm. And at conferences, when I'm the recruiter, one student is so clever. Like it's just checking up on the person recruiting you, right? Like you go up to them and like, hey, like I know it's been a long day, like how you doing? And then that just sparks a conversation, and then like it helps open up and feel more comfortable instead of like the whole routine of, yeah, I'm from this school, I have this GPA, I did this and I did that. After hearing that for so long, it does kind of mix in. But yeah, that strategy that student did was like, oh, thanks for like if you have
Yeah, if you have an extra piece of candy, you can be like, hey, do you want a piece of candy? Like, I know it's 2:00, you know?
I got you
Or
some coffee.
yeah, just kind of like break the ice a little bit. And some people will not like that. Like that, some recruiters are just like, you know, bland in those ways. They're like, no, just keep on going. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You got to find the other ones. Other folks.
Yeah, looking at your LinkedIn, I gotta do some adjustments on mine.
I was like, I still need to do some adjustments on mine too. Okay. Are there other?
Well,
If there's no more. Yeah.
yeah,
I
like
do have another question if it's okay to ask.
Uh-huh. Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, sorry. I think we both spoke at the same time. You could go.
oh no, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So Gustavo, I think you mentioned that you worked after you graduated from college and then you went back to grad school, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Could you, yeah, so has it been like difficult going back into academia after being in industry? I'm
Yeah.
just curious about that process. So I'm currently applying to grad schools, but I'll have like half a year off from school, like in between. So I'm kind of also considering working, and just want to hear your experience.
Definitely. I was actually having this conversation with Mitzi earlier, how being away, I'm just getting so used to the 9 to 5 and coming home and not having to think about work as much. That was complete bliss. And then not doing derivatives and integrals since like years. I couldn't even do a simple derivative when I came back to Cornell. So there's definitely that gap in preparation that I've had. I will say that right now, I'm really not taking courses for grades. I'm mostly auditing and just relearning everything. And to the point where I've never taken quantum mechanics in my life. Like I've never taken nanotechnology courses, but for my research, that's what we got to learn. So right now it's like trying to learn as much as I can, watching a lot of YouTube videos, and that's how I'm picking it up. What I would say also is that having those 3 years what I needed, because the pay was substantial. It allowed me to see what I wanted to do, if it was continue to industry or go to school. And I think I needed those 3 years to learn that. And with that, I actually was able to for example, pay off all my loans, pay off my car, and then buy a home. So in itself, it was like a detour that I took that was very purposeful. And I think that those 3 years actually helped me get a lot of offer for schools too. They saw that I was committed to these projects at work, and they're like, yeah, he's great. He'll be a great fit here. So yeah, I think it was a purposeful delay. And although picking it up is so much harder now, like, oh my goodness, it's worth it. And I have 5 years. Like, you have 5 years to build this. The negotiations that I've had with my principal investigator, she's essentially my boss, is that too. Like, I just need time to relearn everything. And she's willing to be like, yeah, take your time, learn it. And then next year we'll start picking it up. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
I think both of you mentioned like having like been transitioning from different multiple jobs. So I'm just wondering, like, I don't know, how did you manage continuing working for a job that you didn't like working for, and also trying to actively find for a new job? Yeah.
Yeah. I will say all the jobs I've had I've liked, but I have advised a lot of people on like that same situation of like at a job where you hate and you you want to transition. And I think the big thing is timing and money. And when it comes to money is you ideally want to do all this interviewing, looking for other jobs and all that while you're still in your current job, because having that money come in, it is important. I think having health insurance is also like very important too. When you're thinking about transitioning, you technically don't have to tell your manager you're looking for jobs. So that's one thing that's important. You could do an entire interview process, go all the way far, even to the part where you get an offer letter and not have to tell your manager that you got a job until like maybe they have to do reference checks. And I actually had a situation with one of my old students that I was helping with her right now with her negotiation, where she didn't want her manager to know that she was applying to the jobs, because she's all like, I don't know if they're going to say anything good about me because they don't really like me right now. And like everybody's leaving on the team. So she's worried what that's going to look like for her. So she actually negotiated that with the company to say, can I sign this offer letter without a reference check? And they said yes. So she already signed her offer letter. She asked for additional time in between like when she has to actually start that job. So she's not going to tell her manager until she gives a 2 weeks notice. And legally they can't do anything. So you're giving them a 2 weeks notice as courtesy. In the state of California, I think you legally have to tell them, you can tell them like the day of when you quit, because most jobs are at will, meaning like you can quit for whatever reason, you don't have to tell them. Same way like they can fire you for any reason, they don't have to tell you. But it's like a courtesy thing to give them 2 weeks so that they can like figure some things out. But so what I would usually say is organize your time if it's happening. So if you already know like this job sucks, like I don't want to be here, the job might be great, but that skill set's not useful for you. So like I have a student, she's actually still at Cal right now, so I mentor her, but she's studying like math and very in the tech space, trying to do that. But she was working in the library. Library was cool. Freshman year, new to college. Second year, I was like, homegirl, you can't work at the library anymore. Like that's not gonna help you with learning what you like and what you don't like. So she has to transition jobs. But what you want to do is figure out your time, like how much do you want to commit, especially if you're doing career changes. Like you might commit like 2 hours every afternoon to think about informational interviews, looking at job listings, making sure your resume is updated. I personally, when I was like doing a job transition, I didn't do new cover letters for every company. Some people might recommend that. I didn't. I just made it very general. So I actually at some point just had the same cover letter and like resume, and I just like submitted that to all the companies. But I made sure it was thorough. So that's what really helped me out. But you got to think about yourself. I think that's something I will say when it comes to transitioning. I think we give a lot to companies and we want to be like, oh, we don't want to make them feel bad. We want to make sure like they can transition well. Like this is business. It's not personal. So the business is, you got to do what you got to do for you to be happy. If that means you're going to spend time outside of work and apply for jobs, get internships, whatever it is to get a new offer, and you just have to let them know like 2 weeks, you're like, I'm done. Sorry, these are my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to be transitioning. You don't have to tell them where you're going to or anything like that. That's very usual actually to happen. I think for a lot of us, that's not usual in our space, especially like with EOP students, because we don't know how to navigate internships and jobs, and like we don't know how to negotiate and move things around. But in general, that's very common to do. So I would say protect yourself, do what's best for you, because it's a business move. You have to think about it in that way. Gustavo, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
I did, and I forgot. What was the question again? I had it.
About transitioning roles.
Yes. Okay. So my program is a 3-year rotation. So every year you get to choose a new role. The first year was great. The second year was tough. And that is more like, I can't leave the program because of that 1 year. But what it did help is to notice that I didn't want to do that role or that position for the rest of my life. So having that 1 year of, it's not really a sacrifice, but it's more like a getting to know what you don't like. Also, it's a huge investment. And that year also made me see that, you know what, I kind of do miss going back into the academia, like being in a research field. The goal is to become a professor, to have my own lab and students and help them out and mentor in that way. So like having that year of reflection was just what I needed. Because if I liked them all, then I would have been like, yeah, we'll stay with the company. And then I would not have felt this way. So it opens eyes too. And every experience might be the same way.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you. You guys were super helpful.
Of course, yeah, we're here. Does anyone else have? I know we're like super run over time, but it's a small group at this point. But do y'all have any last minute questions? Okay, Maya, I don't know if you want to wrap it up or.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, if no one else wants to, yeah, then I guess that kind of concludes everything. Thank y'all for, being awesome speakers and coming out to talk to us. It was really cool of y'all to do that and to make time for us. So
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you.